Okay, I think we're going to get started now. So thank you everybody for joining today. My name is Eileen Jacob. I'm the Director of Admissions for the LGO program here at MIT. I am joined by my colleagues, Pam Searle and Sharona Bollinger, who will be helping and presenting and just answering all of your questions throughout our presentation today. All right, so I'm going to first start with talking a little bit about the application and LGO. Pam will also talk about some more advice and things to keep in mind when applying, and then we will open it up for some Q&A. We'll also have one of our colleagues from Sloan, Jennifer Barba, joining us in a little while too. All right, so that being said, why don't we get started? So as a quick recap, in case you are not already aware of the LGO program, Leaders for Global Operations is what it's called. This is a 2-year dual degree program in which you earn both your master's in engineering and your MBA at MIT. And you are a full student of the Sloan MBA program as well as the MIT engineering department that you're a part of. And so this is also in addition to being a part of the LGO program itself with staff to help support you along the way. This is a very unique dual degree program that's been fully integrated and around for over 30 years, stemming from that demand to strike a balance between engineering and business disciplines. So our LGO program, as a result, has created a very close-knit network of over 1,300 alumni in a group that's still very actively involved with the program and our students today. Another feature of this program includes our partner companies who fund the program and help make it possible to provide on average at least 55% tuition scholarship towards every admitted student without funding of their own. And we also guarantee each LGO student a 6-month internship as a part of the program structure through one of our partner companies. And so a lot of benefits to working with them and their support in the program. And so, as you're a student in the LGO program, you're going to be honing your technical skills to solve problems in operations and technology, and also gain the tools that you need to become an innovative leader and making direct impact within whichever industry you're in. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to talk specifically about the application and answer questions that you have. So just to give a snapshot of where we are right now, this is our newest class of 22, the graduating class of 2022. A couple of just stats about the program. Usually each year, the LGO class is about 45 to 50 students. Average years of work experience is 5 years. The middle 80% range is usually around 2 to 10 years. So that might be helpful context as well. This is not to say that we don't admit students who are outside of that range. However, since we do get this question a lot, particularly for candidates who have less than 2 years of work experience, wanted to give the range and let you know there's not a hard number that we look for years of work experience. It is generally, though, more competitive for applicants who apply without at least 2 years of work experience. Although it does happen, it really just depends on the applicant and the overall application pool each year. The GPA average is about a 3.7. Again, the middle 80% range is from a 3.5 to a 3.97. Again, this is just one facet of a candidate's application that is taken into consideration. So there's something to keep in mind there. And then looking on the left side, previous studies of our students before they started. This does vary a bit each year. However, often we do have many students from engineering backgrounds, among other STEM representation, as you can see. And on the right of the industry backgrounds, we do have a pretty good variety as well. So many from this past year from energy and oil, auto and transportation, technology, manufacturing, and biotech. Sometimes this varies each year, but generally we do have a lot of students, and it's a good fit, again, for students who have a STEM background and work in different tech roles, ops, biotech, these types of different industries. Okay, so something to keep in mind before we dive into some of the details of the application, as you may already know, every application is reviewed holistically. So again, what this means is that there's not one piece of a candidate's application that's going to make or break their chances of admission. It really is all taken into account. Sometimes we get questions about the application process itself, given that it's a dual degree program across 2 different schools at MIT. But the good news is that you complete one application for LGO that's reviewed by the Sloan admissions team, as well as the engineering department that you're applying to, and the LGO admissions team. You can also apply through either the Sloan application or through the School of Engineering. Whichever you select will be considered your primary school, meaning that if you're not admitted to LGO, you'll then be considered for admission to whichever primary school you're in, either considered for admission to the MBA program or for your master's program. So also during the review process, we're scoring you on different competencies, as I'm sure you would assume, things like how well you work on a team, how you solve scientific problems and perform in advanced STEM coursework and projects from undergrad or from master's studies as well. Also looking into how you communicate change and get buy-in from those around you, knowing your audience and leadership potential in that regard, as well as how your academic goals fit with your chosen engineering department. So it's just a quick sample. And now, so Pam and I are going to go through some of the 3 primary categories that you see here: the academics, qualities, professional and personal qualities of your application, to discuss these components in more detail. Okay, so first I'll talk a little bit about the academic performance. And so your academic record is looked at closely by both Sloan and your engineering department. We are looking at your GPA, the courses you completed, any trends in your grades over your academic terms. It's all sort of taken into account. And the engineering department is particularly interested in any STEM courses that you've completed. Well, you don't necessarily need to have completed all, for example, aero and astro classes in order to be considered for the aero astro department. They, like other departments, will look for evidence that you have mastered the fundamentals of engineering courses, the fundamentals of engineering, so that you'll be able to, just really hit the ground running when you start your courses for your master's degree at MIT. So it's a good idea to check out our website on each specific engineering department to learn more about any particular courses that each department looks for, as well as other things to keep in mind about indicating any areas of research that you're interested in, but we'll talk a little bit about that later with the statement of purpose. So, but anyway, looking at the courses can really help. And some departments, like mechanical engineering, for example, offer guidance for online prerequisite courses that they would suggest for students to prepare before the program. Other departments, like chemical engineering, can give specifics about the type of math and quantitative skill sets an incoming student should be comfortable doing, just to help manage expectations and to help you to decide if the engineering department is the right one for you. So additionally, our office is happy to answer questions that you may have about the courses you've completed and whether you'd be a competitive candidate for a particular engineering department. So that kind of ties into the 3rd bullet of mentioning quant proficiency. And so if you're very interested in applying to a certain department, but unsure if you have the right engineering or quantitative background, we can help and also offer suggestions, if it's possible, to take coursework either during the application process or after you've applied to help bolster those skills. And so it's important also, if you can, to indicate in your application if you're currently working on improving your quant or engineering proficiency, if you're taking any online courses, or you can also always email us and we'll add that information to your application materials. Okay, so, and then the last bullet that I hadn't gotten to yet was around standardized test scores. Right now, we're in the process of modifying our standardized test policy for this year. And so more information about that will be on our website by the end of this week. And so we can talk about that in more detail a bit later on. So moving on, we're going to talk a little bit more about professional accomplishments and ways to highlight within these different components of your application, things to keep in mind to highlight your leadership and impact and just some other factors. So let me just, sorry, one second. Different ways to highlight your career progress and impact include the letters of recommendation, your resume as well. There's also an organizational chart, which is part of the online application, and that helps give context into your current role and the organizational structure where you work to better understand who reports to you, who you report to, and get a framework for the company and understanding your role within that company structure. So I'll talk a little bit now about the letters of recommendation. For LGO, 2 letters of recommendation are required, one from a technical source who can speak specifically to your analytical acumen, technical expertise and depth, as well as quantitative problem solving and just the ability to look closely into a technical problem. This is usually a letter that's supplied by a former professor. However, if you're more than a couple years out of your undergrad or graduate studies, it's good to have a supervisor or senior colleague or manager supply the technical letter, as they would likely have a more recent snapshot of your technical abilities and be able to provide that depth and the examples that we're looking for. The other letter of recommendation is from a professional source, so ideally a current or former direct supervisor. This would be a great person to ask. The title of these individuals really is not as important as the details that they can offer about their experience working with you and your analytical problem solving abilities, things like who you are as a teammate and your potential for future success. We want to get the details about that from your letters of recommendation. I'd advise also to give your recommenders plenty of time to write the letters. It's also good ahead of time to discuss your career interests with them and talk about why you're pursuing your graduate degree to give them more context into your next professional steps and what you hope to do. The cover letter, I definitely would advise candidates to treat this like a traditional cover letter, an opportunity to share more about yourself and explain how you would fit into the LGO program. So like other cover letters, this is your chance to thoughtfully include one or more examples that illustrate how you question the status quo and think outside the box to offer innovative solutions and ideas from your professional experiences so far. So take some time and reflect on this, as it can be kind of challenging to put together this compelling snapshot of yourself in under 300 words. So give yourself time to work on your draft and really come back and revisit it as you're putting together your application. And lastly, too, I'll talk about the resume. So we ask that each resume is 1 page, and there are specific formatting instructions included on the application, but is definitely, to include some of the basics you would assume, your education, so any relevant awards and scholarships at professional societies. We obviously want to look at your work experience, so any companies you've worked at, your title, not just noting your responsibilities, but if you can also highlight results-oriented facets that demonstrate your skill sets, and obviously the dates to better understand the timeline of your career. And we also ask to provide additional information, so things can include languages spoken, extracurricular activities in community service or other volunteer work, any technical skills or certifications, or special interests if that's appropriate to share too. This resume is meant to be an outline, really, a highlight of your career progression. Not just, like I said, noting your responsibilities, but think about highlighting the impact that you've had within each role and company that you were in. And really kind of quantifying that if you can as well within the different bullets on your resume. You will also get a chance, if it can be challenging to fit all of your accomplishments onto 1 page, you can provide more detail if needed in the work experience section of your application that will allow you to get into some more details about the types of projects or leadership that you've had within different roles. Okay, so next, we're going to move on and talk a little bit. I'm going to pass the torch here to Pam, who's going to talk about some of the personal qualities that we look for in our applications.
Great, thanks, Eileen. So in addition to academic performance and professional accomplishments, we're also looking for personal qualities or attributes that make candidates a good fit for the program. So these personal attributes are highlighted in your statement of purpose, your 60-second video statement, and in your interview. We also look for your personal qualities through any leadership you've done outside of work. So for example, any volunteer work you've done, mentoring, professional development, or even any sports teams. So we want to make sure that you're a good cultural fit for the program. And as you might know, LGO is designed for students who are interested in the intersection of business and technology, who want to become industry leaders, and who see problems and solve problems. We often say LGOs get things done. LGO students are also incredibly humble and extremely collaborative. So we're looking for candidates who show us through the application and the interview that they're a good match for the LGO program. The statement of purpose is a short essay outlining why you would like to enroll in the engineering department you choose. This is a great opportunity for us to learn about your passions and really where you want to focus while in the program. We can learn a lot about you from this essay, so I encourage you to be as specific as possible. The video statement is designed to help you add color and context to your application. So we're looking to better understand your presence in the video, your passions, and your interests. How you approach the video is completely up to you, but feel free to use both professional and personal examples. This is a great place to add anything that you may not have already had the opportunity to mention anywhere else in your application. Another area where we look for your personal presence and fit for the program is during the interview. Interviews are behavioral based, where we'll ask you to reflect on something that has happened in the past to answer our questions. The interview is a great opportunity for us to get to know you better and also for you to get to know us. So next we will look at the application components. It's a pretty lean application, as you can see here. And just as a reminder, for LGO, you just submit one application. We're looking for mission-driven students who have a history of leadership and impact, but who are also talented engineers who can use analytical tools to solve complex problems. As Eileen mentioned, we use a very holistic review process, and all applications are reviewed at least twice. So I have a few tips and just wanted to sort of address some frequently asked questions that we often see. We really suggest that you apply when you're ready and when your application is going to be the strongest. So certainly don't rush just to apply in round one. But applying early could prolong your application's shelf life. For example, you could be waitlisted in round one, reevaluated, and then admitted in round two. For recommendations, we suggest to choose the recommenders who truly know you the very best and can speak in most detail about your skills and abilities. As Eileen talked a little bit about this, at least one of the recommenders should be able to discuss your engineering abilities. And this technical recommendation does not have to come from an academic source. For the engineering statement of purpose, again, be as clear and precise for your academic interests as possible. If there are classes or professors you're really interested in, feel free to mention that here. We often use this statement to help pair candidates with advisors. And for the video statement, although it's nice to have an interesting background, just make sure we can hear you. And finally, just be yourself. We're really looking to understand your passions, your interests, and your personal story. So next we will take a look at the application deadlines. So as you can see, this year round one will be on October 1st and round two will be December 1st. And in round one, you can apply through the MBA system. In round two, you can apply either through the MBA system or the engineering system. We don't have a preference where you apply. It's just the differences in your plan B. So for example, if you apply through the MBA system and we're not able to admit you to LGO, you'll be automatically considered for the MBA program. And it works similarly on the engineering side as well. So if you apply through engineering and we're not able to admit you, you'd be considered for a straight master's in engineering. And with that, I will pass it back to Eileen.
Thanks, Pam. A lot of helpful information there. I hope everyone was taking notes. So now I think we're going to shift gears a little bit and start answering some of the questions for a little bit of a live Q&A. So thank you to everyone who was submitting questions while we were presenting. Before we get started, I also wanted to introduce our colleague from the Sloan admissions team, Jennifer Barba. She's our Senior Associate Director of Admissions. Jen, would you like to say hello?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Eileen and Pam. Thanks for having me join today. I'm just here to answer any questions that are related to the MBA components of the application and happy to help out wherever I can.
Great. Thanks, Jen. Thanks for being here as well. So let's talk a little bit about some of the questions that we're seeing. Lots of good ones. So one of the questions too, this could be helpful as well for Jen to answer, is about the org chart. Any element of creativity, or is it supposed to just be a simple business chart?
Yep. So the organizational chart is a tool for us to better understand where you are within your organization and then who you typically work alongside or work with in your organization. So I think there can be some degree of creativity that you use when you create this org chart. I think we're not only interested in your direct lines above and below, but also any dotted lines you might have. So I think, sometimes a traditional organizational chart is a little bit too dense or detailed for what we need, but we've included several examples within the application and within the MBA admissions FAQ section of the website, so you can take a look at those. I will say, make sure it's easy for us to identify who you are on the org chart, where you sit in the org chart, and then also if your recommenders appear within that organizational chart, highlight them for us as well. And then finally, like the tip for the org chart is that you can actually upload 2 pages. So if you work for a very large organization, like an Amazon, for instance, you might include your particular department or your group that you work with on the first page, and then maybe a larger, larger scale, big picture version of where that sits within the larger organization. And then maybe finally, please redact the names of people. We only really need to see your name, your recommenders' names, and then just the titles of the people within the organization.
Great, thanks for all those helpful details, Jen.
Mm-hmm.
Another question, just if I could repeat the GPA range I shared earlier for students from the admitted class of 2022. So yes, the middle 80% range was 3.5 to 3.97, and the average GPA is about a 3.7. All right. Another question too. So how about a template? Is there a template available for the cover letter and resume for students who might need a little guidance on how to structure it?
So we really just request that you use a 1-page resume that kind of details your experiences in reverse chronological order. We do not have a specific template, but it's important to keep in mind that it's really just a 1-page resume. We're not necessarily interested in the specific details of your job description there on that resume. We're more interested in seeing results of your work and your ability to kind of grow within the path that you've been on, or, if you've switched organizations or jobs, how that sort of demonstrated the different skills or different accomplishments that you've had along the way. The cover letter is just a straight cover letter. I think it includes who to address the cover letter to, and then 300 words within the text of the letter. So a pretty standard, cover letter correspondence that you would use to apply for any, professional position.
All right, perfect. So let's see. Another question too is around the letters of recommendation. So can a current supervisor write both the letters of recommendation, the technical and the professional? I would say that it's good to have 2 separate recommenders to offer 2 different perspectives there. Think about which letter would be the most applicable for your direct supervisor, and who, how they could best answer the questions and provide some of those details about your technical abilities and analytical skills, versus more of the professional about your role on the team and leadership potential and some of those areas. So definitely would need 2 separate individuals to write your letters, and it could be a tough decision, but yeah, try and decide which one is the best fit for each of the letters of recommendation we ask for. Okay, great. Another question too about the resume. So should clubs from college and other organizations be placed under educational or additional information? I think this might be a personal preference. Jen, what do you think?
So we don't really have any specific fields in addition to the resume in the application that asks for like extracurricular activities. So really the resume is the best place to highlight that. There's places within the application to include, non-degree coursework that you've taken or certificates that you've earned, but there isn't really a specific place to talk about extracurricular activities. So really that should be highlighted on the resume. Usually we find it towards the bottom of the resume.
Great. Another question too is around the Sloan, the early admit program, and if students can apply for that and then join the LGO program. So yeah, short answer is yes, but Jen, would you like to elaborate?
Yeah, so if you're a current college senior and you're interested in applying to the deferred MBA program, or deferred MBA option, I should say, that we offer, you would apply through the early MBA application process, and then in the year that you plan to matriculate. So if admitted, and then in the year you plan to matriculate, you're interested in joining or being considered for the LGO program, there's sort of an abbreviated version of an application that you would submit typically by the round 1 deadline of that year. An LGO would take you into account, given that you've already been admitted to the MBA program. I don't know if, and then another thing that maybe Pam or Eileen could mention is along the way. So if admitted to the early MBA program, you have between 2 to 5 years to defer your admission. And then there's lots of programming in between for those admitted candidates during that conversion process that would be available to best prepare you to apply for LGO.
Oh, Pam, I think you're talking, but we can't hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll take one here about pet peeves in the application. I would say it can hurt applicants sometimes if they're not very specific. So kind of talking in sort of general statements. So we really want details about what you're interested in and, specifics of examples and things like that. Also, if applicants repeat examples throughout the application, I would recommend trying to use each piece of the application to talk about different examples. So I don't know if anyone else has anything to add into that.
I think that sounds good.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Thanks, Pam. Another question too, just about the criteria to apply and be considered for LGO and having a bachelor's degree. And yes, that is a requirement. We don't offer flexibility on that. Every candidate does need to have completed a bachelor's degree in order to be reviewed and considered for the LGO program. Let's see. So talking about, oh, sorry, Pam, do you want to?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay. So someone who maybe has had a not as strong academic record, but a really strong professional career, advice and talking about application chances for a candidate in that position. That's a great question. I think that, it's important to, as I mentioned before, it is a really holistic review process. And so if your academics were not, what you'd hope they'd be, if there were extenuating circumstances, first of all, make sure you're not leaving the admissions committee guessing about what happened. And so make sure you let us know if there were extenuating circumstances that caused lower grades than you had hoped for, just so we have more context about what was going on then. But every part of the application is taken into consideration. And so if your academics are not as strong as you had hoped, we'll be looking in other parts of the application to make sure that you have the quant readiness to handle the rigors of the program. And so we'll be looking at your work experience, any other coursework that you've taken, what your technical letter of recommendation indicates too about your analytical skills. So make sure the other parts of your application can help sort of reaffirm your skill sets on the quant and analytical side.
Great, and we have one here about, do you interview with admissions officers or alumni in your region? This person's based in Tokyo, so maybe Jen, would you like to talk a little bit about the interview?
Yep, so all of the interviews are conducted by Sloan admissions committee members. And so these are, professionally trained interviewers who are, obviously a part of the MBA admissions committee and also a part of the LGO admissions committee. And the interview is really, essentially an MBA interview with a couple of LGO specific questions towards the end, but we're looking to dig a lot deeper into the competencies and characteristics that we look for in an MBA candidate. So, I think Pam touched on this before, but really looking at, how you solve problems, how you work within a team, what happens when things don't go according to plan. All the questions are kind of positioned as behavioral questions that are going to ask you to focus on examples of how you've handled these situations in the past. And then there'll be some questions at the end around what are your motivations for pursuing this degree? You know, why is the LGO program a great match for you and your future goals? And what are some of the things that you hope to accomplish, you know, during the program and then after? And so those interviews are conducted by, I think for LGO, there's probably only about 7 or 8 people who conduct the interviews for the LGO program. In a normal year, we would travel to you in Tokyo and meet you in person, face to face. Unfortunately, for this coming year, we will not be traveling. So all of the interviews will be conducted over videos and, you know, likely using Zoom or Skype. So we're just working out those final details, but all of the interviews will be conducted face to face in a live video feed. And, you know, we'll be sure to share as many details as we can as soon as we can finalize all of that. And across all different time zones as well, I should add. So for people who are in Asia, you know, we'll definitely have interviews available at times of the day that are convenient for you.
Perfect. That's very helpful. All right. A question too about recommenders. If your manager or supervisor is no longer in the position, you know, this person has resigned, or, you know, if someone's retired, which is another possibility too, could they still write your letter of recommendation? Yes, that's still possible. I think it's, you know, completely fine as long as they can provide the, you know, detailed answers to the questions we're looking for. And as long as you worked closely with that individual, it's okay if their status has changed. So good question.
Great. We have one about the technical recommendation. Do they answer the technical experience questions in addition or in place of the other questions for the recommendation? So the technical recommender must answer the 2 technical prompts, and if they can answer the other questions, that's great. We're looking for as much data as we can get, but if they can only answer the technical questions, that's okay too.
All right, lots of good questions. Another one that I think Jen could also, you know, give some insight to is about the video, and, you know, what do applicants typically talk about or highlight during the video?
Yeah, so the video is a great opportunity for us to learn a little bit more about kind of your personal side. So I think the way I like to explain the video is, say you're walking into like a professional networking event, and, you know, maybe it was an organization you were familiar with, but you didn't specifically know the people that you would be networking or meeting. So you would, you know, walk up to a table and introduce yourself, say, hi, my name is Jen. You know, I'm part of the admissions committee at the Sloan School, but, you know, maybe share a little bit more details about, you know, what you do outside of work or what's important to you and why. And with that, you know, why are you pursuing this degree, or what is it about MIT that is going to make it, you know, an amazing place for you to accomplish your goals. So it's really just intended to be like a 1-minute introduction to your kind of hypothetical future classmates. It's a piece of the application that the admissions committee really does value. It's a great way for us to learn a little bit more beyond the surface of, you know, what you're involved in. You know, think about it as a way for us to learn more about you beyond your resume or your LinkedIn profile.
We have a question here for international students. Are the fees noted online the same for international students? Yes, everything is the same. We evaluate applications the same, whether they're international or domestic. Every admitted student, as Eileen mentioned, receives a generous LGO fellowship, and that includes, of course, international students as well. So we review everyone the same.
Great. Another question too, advice to reapplicants to the program. A great question too. So yeah, you know, for reapplicants, we definitely suggest that, you know, one of the first things that candidates can do if they aren't admitted and are interested in reapplying is to contact us that summer before starting their application. And, you know, we can answer any questions about reapplying and help give a little bit more guidance on preparing their application. And so when you do reapply, first of all, there's no disadvantage. They're not viewed differently. I think it's important for every reapplicant to just, you know, address areas that have changed since they last applied, and making sure you're sharing that updated information. And that's, again, it's the same review process from there on out and the same chances of admission as any other applicant.
We have a question here about, do research papers and patents add any value to the application? So they certainly do add value. It's not a requirement to have research papers or patents, but I think it speaks to your academic rigor. So it's helpful to highlight that if that's your case.
Okay, great. Another question too, if students are not admitted to LGO and then being considered for the Sloan MBA or for the engineering department they applied to, will the application be evaluated with the current round or the next round? I remember this came up during preview day too. Jen, do you want to talk a little bit from the Sloan perspective?
Yeah, so if you apply in round one, likely your application will be pushed into the round two MBA pool. But if you apply in round two and you're not admitted to LGO, we will try to get you a decision on MBA within that same round. In fact, the LGO notification date is usually a little bit earlier than the round two MBA deadline date. So we have a little bit more breathing room to reconsider applications at that point. So we'll do our best to get you a decision. We know that you're all strong candidates and you'll have lots of great offers come decision days. But sometimes it's not possible for us to get you that decision on just the MBA by the round one deadline.
And that's pretty much the same too for engineering as well. Same timeline and strategy.
Our next question is, are we planning to host a session with current LGO students? The answer is yes. We have lots of upcoming webinars. We also do weekly or monthly coffee chats with current students. So you'll have lots of opportunities to speak with current students. So just check out online and you can register for our upcoming events.
Yes, lots of ways to connect still. So another question about the statement of purpose. Defining a specific industry of interests, or should we just focus more on the types of business and engineering we want to solve? I think, yeah, you don't need to focus on any industries of interest. I think this is more focused on the engineering department that you want to join and talking about the research areas specifically within that department. And so if there's ones that really stand out to you or faculty whose research is really appealing to you, we wanted to hear that and why that ties into your previous experience, potentially why it can help with your next career steps as well. And so the research areas are all highlighted on the engineering side as well as on the LGO page if you want to get a better idea of what's available within each department. Additionally, too, if you're not sure, because there is a little bit of overlap sometimes with engineering departments and what research areas are covered, feel free to contact us and we can help sort of advise you on which department would be the best fit given your background and your career goals.
Great. We have a question here asking, does it matter that we have two recommenders that are direct supervisors, but not a technical recommender? So we do require one of your recommenders to answer the technical prompts. So they would be sort of labeled as your technical recommender. It's fine if one of those happens to be a direct supervisor. It certainly doesn't have to be from a professor or an academic source, but we do require that at least one of your recommendations addresses those technical questions.
Okay, great. Another question, if candidates are applying through Sloan, considering the cover letter, should it be made out to the MBA program or directed to the LGO program in general? I think there are instructions online about this too.
Yeah, I think if you apply through LGO, it should be directed to LGO.
Yep. It is reviewed by the Sloan team as well. So.
Yeah.
Somebody's asking, is it appropriate to have family in the video statement or should it just be the candidate? So maybe Jen can talk a little bit about the video.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen lots of people introduce us to their family members in the video. I think, just you have 60 seconds is kind of a precious amount of time to give us as much information as you want. So, but we certainly like to see a little personality and learn a little bit more about you in the video. I think that's fine.
Here's a nice question too about startup experience and whether that counts as work experience and whether research experience and post-grad research fellowships count as full-time work experience. I think it depends on, it has to be full-time is really the key for all of those questions too about startup experience, that it's not just a side gig to another role that you're doing, that it actually is full-time work experience. But Jen, would you like to add anything to that too?
Yeah, I mean, so so startup experience, I'll address that first. So, if you've graduated from your undergraduate degree or additional master's degree and you've been working on a startup, we're going to ask a lot of questions about kind of the size and scope of the work that you're doing there, what type of funding or what type of results that startup has. But if that's something that you're pursuing full time, then that certainly counts as full-time work experience. And then in terms of postgraduate research or fellowships, that too does account towards full-time work experience. I mean, you're doing research full-time. If you have, white papers or other documentation that can help to support kind of the results of some of that research, that's great to see as well. But we will ask more details around, the research that you've been doing and sort of how you've been able to create metrics to measure the results of that and how you've been able to achieve those.
Great. Our next question comes from someone who has a math degree, interested in ORC, currently works not in a traditional engineering role. And so this is fine. I just wanted to address that you don't need to have been an engineer or worked as an engineer. Any STEM background, math is definitely a good thing for ORC. So that would be fine.
Okay, there's a couple of questions too about the org structure or the org chart. So maybe we can talk about those. One is just if a candidate has been promoted over the years, should that capture the org chart before or after a promotion? I mean, I would think it would be as of the time you're applying is the best way. But yeah, Jen, is there anything else to keep in mind there?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see the promotion represented in your resume. So we're really just interested in, at the time of application, where are you on that org chart?
And another question from this too, if a candidate is working in teams with clients, should the clients be included in the org chart, or is that not really necessary?
Yes, so we have an example of this actually on the web, but if you're working as a consultant, we're not necessarily interested in the organizational chart of business analysts at McKinsey. We're more interested in the org chart of the project that you're staffed on or a recent project that you've been staffed on and how you're interacting with the different departments or groups within that client team. So this might be an example of when you might want to include two org charts if you've only, depending on the kind of the length or amount of time that you've been able to be working within the current project that you're on. Again, we're not looking for the names of people, we're looking for the titles of the people and a little bit more detail around the different departments or groups that you're working with at that current client organization.
We have a question here asking, can students switch departments once accepted if they feel their interests lie elsewhere? The answer is no, they cannot. It's a very sort of rigorous and complex evaluation process with each engineering department. Sometimes it has to do with advisors and your specific background, things like that. So you're not able to switch. That being said, MIT in general is a very flexible place. So lots of our students take a couple of their engineering electives outside of their chosen engineering department. So certainly you're able to take the classes you're most interested in, but you'd have to stay within your department overall.
Great. Another question too about if the LGO program is a good fit for people who want to become entrepreneurs. It is. I mean, this is a very versatile program, and so when you join LGO, you're joining the Sloan MBA program as well as the MIT, engineering school to be able to leverage the resources available across those two schools as well as the campus of MIT itself. And so getting involved with the Martin Trust Center for Entrepreneurship, using your classmates across the different programs to work together and learn from each other. We've had many students who go on to start entrepreneurial ventures after graduating from LGO. It is a very flexible curriculum that allows students to take the electives that they're most interested in. once they've completed their core classes, and to be able to, again, network across different departments and different peers to sort of learn what you need and gain those business skills to start a company afterward. So definitely is an option for students interested in LGO.
We have a question about the application deadlines. Are they rolling? No, we have 2 deadlines, as I mentioned. October 1st is round 1 and December 1st is our round 2 deadline.
Maybe just to give a little more details about that. So if you apply in round 1, you should be notified of an interview invitation towards the end of October. So we don't have the specific date yet, but we will let you know by the time you apply, what date we'll release interview invitations on. And then everybody hears if they're invited to interview on that same date or if they will not move forward in the process. And then the same thing in December, if you apply in the round 2 deadline, you should hear about an interview invitation within about a month of the deadline.
Great. So we have one here, a question about, can a recommender be a client who I worked with before? Jen, would you like to speak to that one?
Sure. Yeah, I think, recommenders, we're looking for people who you have worked for, not necessarily a peer. So if this is somebody who can, speak to your ability to succeed in a professional environment, there are 4 to 5 different prompts that we ask recommenders to speak to on that form. You can see them detailed on our website, find individuals who are able to give us kind of detailed examples to support the specific questions we're asking on the rec.
Great. Let's see what else here. I guess, Jen, do you have any other tips that you would like to share that we haven't covered?
I think that you've covered most of it. Maybe just for the interview process, towards when you get to that interview, be prepared to kind of sell yourself at the end as to why MIT's LGO program is the best match for you. What is it about LGO that makes it, something that will help you to achieve your goals in the future? Why is the community at LGO, why is the partner organizations and the internship something that will help you to kind of leverage the skills that you're looking to build in the future? This is kind of the first step in learning a little bit more about the application process. I'm sure some of you have already joined other webinars or other events to meet more individuals from the LGO community, as well as the Sloan community and engineering, but I would encourage you to continue to do all of that. This is sort of a unique year where you'll have to, continue to engage with us online through these virtual events, but, there are many, many opportunities for you to get to know us better, and we would encourage you to do so. Ultimately, I think when we're in those final admissions committee meetings, we are so fortunate to have an incredibly strong pool of applicants applying to the LGO program and to the MBA program. But really sometimes, what kind of tips the scales for us are the people who really want MIT and who have, been able to, clearly articulate why an experience at MIT will help them achieve their goals.
Another question too is for applicants who may have a family, and is this program doable with students who have families to support? And it is doable, yes, and you would not be alone, that's for sure. We have a lot of students who have SOs and families of their own that it's a balancing act for sure. It requires some time management and planning, like any graduate program really, but you would be joining a very supportive network of other students across all of the different programs, really, to help and make sure that it's as smooth a transition for you and your family as possible. Resources within MIT, around different daycare opportunities exist. Lots of different get-togethers, although now virtually, but hopefully will change in the future. But certainly is not uncommon for students to join who have families.
Yeah, and I would also just add that if you have specific questions on what is it like to be a parent in LGO, feel free to reach out to us at lgo@mit.edu, and we're happy to connect you with current students who also have families now, and they can kind of share their experience. We also just got a question about how can the candidates connect with the engineering departments in which they're applying to. So we can't make any promises about engineering. We definitely recommend reaching out first to sort of the graduate admins at each engineering department. We're also always happy to connect you with current students in a particular engineering department. So we can start with that. And again, I know we've mentioned this a few times, but just lgo@mit.edu, we're always happy to kind of work with you one-on-one.
There's the email too for anybody who needs it. Another question too, can I apply if I already have a master's degree? Yes, the answer is yes, you can. It would need to be a different master's degree than the engineering department that you want to be considered for. Obviously, I wouldn't be able to get another MBA either. So those are just the only stipulations, but we do have many candidates who apply and join the program with a previous master's degree, sometimes also PhD students. So just depends on your plans and if LGO makes sense for you.
Great. So this person has a question about if you feel that there's something lacking in your application, is there a place for us to explain the circumstance? Jen, would you want to touch on this a little bit?
So the nice thing about the application is there's lots of hidden little short answer questions to help you address these things. So if it's something that has to do with academics, there's a section within the academic transcripts or academic information section of the website to include any extenuating circumstances. And similarly, there's a section like that within the employment section as well. And then you know, if there's anything else, I would potentially address it either in the cover letter or in your video.
Great. So we're going to be wrapping up soon, but maybe you have time for just a few more questions. Another question too, I had mentioned earlier when I was talking about letters of recommendation, if you've been out of school for a while, maybe it's best to have a colleague write your technical letter versus a professor. What is a while? Good question. Thanks for checking. I would say a while would probably be more than 3 years out. It's probably a fair amount of time out to have a faculty member versus a professional letter of recommendation give you that maybe 3 to 5 years. You definitely use your best judgment on what you think makes the most sense. Definitely no more than 5 years though. I think that would be way too far out.
We have a question here. Can an alumni of LGO write some sort of letter of recommendation? Definitely yes. This is in addition to the official letters of recommendation. So we actually have an alumni referral program. So you can ask the alum to reach out to us. They may have received this form in the alumni newsletter, for example, but they can essentially fill out a form, and this is where they can submit sort of an additional letter of support, and candidates who have this would also have their application fee waived.
Okay, great. Another question about adding any technical training courses that candidates have completed, of where to put that basically, and in what section. I think that can definitely go into your resume and the additional coursework, but you can also add that's probably.
There's also there is a section, there's an additional coursework upload within just the LGO section of the application that allows you to just create your own sort of table or chart, and you can upload that as a PDF document detailing the specific technical courses that you've completed. In addition, there is this relevant coursework section of the MBA application website, or the LGO website, application, where you can include one by one additional courses that you've taken. But I think for LGO, sometimes the engineering departments like to see the one snapshot. So that is, there's certainly a spot for it. There's actually several spots for it, so.
Great. One question here about this person is currently in another master's program, and they want to apply for LGO. Should they send their transcripts from their current program? So yes, we look for all types of transcripts. We use the unofficial transcripts in the evaluation process, so that's fine. But even if it was study abroad or anything like that, we need all transcripts.
Well, I think we are just about out of time, and I wish that we could have gotten to everyone's questions, but I hope that the ones we addressed were helpful to everyone. Please, again, feel free to reach out and contact us at lgo@mit.edu if you have other questions. If you want to talk about your individual circumstances more, we're happy to help. But just also want to thank Jen and Pam and Sharona for joining today and for all of their help with the webinar. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. As a reminder, the application deadline is coming up on October 1st. And as Pam mentioned earlier, there's many other ways to connect with us before then if you're interested. So please check out the events page on our website. There's also many Sloan events happening as well. So be sure to check out either website really for more information about those upcoming events. Thank you all so much, and we look forward to connecting with you again soon. Take care.